Okay. So we're now recording. So just a reminder, the lectures up until the Christmas break are in the chat. So you can always find them on Teams. And we've decided on a submission for 9 AM the 18th, but we're assuming you're going to have it done by when you come back. So that gives you plenty of time to work on all the other stuff that's coming up. Okay, so today I want to talk about some IT specific frameworks because we've been talking about, sorry? Thought somebody asked something there. We've been talking about all the stuff that we're going to have to do to ensure that we're following all the right protocols, all the right things that we're supposed to be doing, that we are continually improving, that we're making sure that we've got a record of what we've done in case anything goes wrong. So all this kind of governance and risk stuff is there. Clearly, people have looked at this kind of thing and have come up with, in essence, massive checklists just to say, okay, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. Unfortunately for us, they've also done them for what we are most interested in, which is IT stuff. So there's two main IT frameworks for GRC. And what I'm going to do is just firstly give you a quick overview of what they are.
In this short video, we're going to look at the relationship between COBIT 5 and ITIL. I'll begin by emphasizing that the two frameworks complement one another. It's not a case of choosing one or the other, you need both. The two do have some common concerns, some shared interests. For example, both frameworks describe a number of processes that should be established by a well-run enterprise. In some cases, a COBIT process maps directly onto an ITIL process. For example, the COBIT process BAI06 Manage Changes maps onto the ITIL Change Management process. In other cases, there is no simple mapping, but there is a common concern. For example, the management of risk across the service lifecycle has a high profile in ITIL, but it does not describe a formal process. COBIT, on the other hand, describes process APO12 Manage Risks. Broadly, COBIT is concerned with what IT should be doing, whereas ITIL is more concerned with how it does things. The two frameworks are both concerned with IT, of course, but each has a different focus. ITIL is very much focused on IT. Of course, it recognizes the primacy of the business. It emphasizes that IT exists to support the business. But the bulk of its advice relates to matters internal to IT. COBIT, on the other hand, has the whole enterprise as its concern. Yes, it advises on IT-related issues, but it also recognizes that those issues are not limited to IT professionals. COBIT is a whole enterprise framework. COBIT and ITIL share a number of important characteristics. Both are frameworks. The significance of this is that they provide guidance that an enterprise can draw on to devise solutions that are appropriate to its unique situation. Neither provides an implementation blueprint, neither is a recipe book. Both frameworks derive from real-world experience, so you can be confident that they provide practical advice, that they will work. The frameworks are based on experience drawn from a wide range of enterprises, commercial, not-for-profit and government, organizations both large and small, and enterprises operating in many different countries. Their advice can be applied by any organization. Over the last 10 or more years, ITIL has been adopted by a large number of organizations that were seeking to improve their IT services. It's probably true to say that it has had much greater market penetration than COBIT. Over the next few screens, we'll examine how COBIT can help those organizations to improve further. The first way that COBIT can assist an organization that is already using ITIL practices is that it provides a means of auditing and evaluating its IT activities in a rigorous, objective, and repeatable way. There is no officially sanctioned means of evaluating ITIL service management practices. A number of independent service management consultancies have developed assessment services, but they are proprietary and not necessarily built upon objective foundations. Given its origins as a tool for auditors, it is not surprising that COBIT is designed to be auditable. For example, processes, practices, inputs, and outputs are all given unique identifiers. Interfaces between processes are defined explicitly. In addition, COBIT comes with an assessment framework that includes a training and certification scheme for assessors to ensure rigor and objectivity. COBIT 5 assessments are based on capability rather than maturity. An objective scoring mechanism. A major feature of COBIT that enhances ITIL practices is the goals cascade mechanism. This is illustrated by the diagram on your screen. This mechanism allows IT activities to be linked to stakeholder needs and enterprise objectives. ITIL talks about the need to align IT resources and activity with business objectives, but provides little or no advice on just how to do it. The COBIT Goals Cascade mechanism benefits service management in a number of ways. It can help to prioritize service management improvement opportunities, identify key service management activities, and justify improvement proposals by linking them to organizational objectives. The prime benefit that ITIL provides for COBIT is detailed advice on how to carry out many process activities. As we've already seen, COBIT focuses on what should be done, whereas ITIL advises on how to do them. If you want to know more about how you can use COBIT to improve your service management capability, just get in touch using our email address, which you can see on screen right now.
Okay, so different but complementary.
Mode.
Tori, I think your microphone might be muted. I don't know if it's just me, but I can't hear you.
No, I can't hear him either.
No, it was me, sorry. Weirdly, one of the things I was saying was how slow this computer was and how it wouldn't catch up. So I had unmuted myself and then because nothing had happened, I'd muted myself again and didn't notice. I was also saying that because it came in this order on Moodle, I'm immediately going to swap around what we're doing. So instead of what I've said there, which is COBIT then ITIL, we'll do ITIL first, and we'll do COBIT next week. Remember the core thing with a lot of this stuff, though. Remember that what we're doing is placed in the business world. I know we want to be IT people. I know that for us, IT is what we are doing, and of course it's what we're doing, but without a business to serve, we don't need the IT. So all of these things try and place what we are doing within that relationship to make sure that what we are doing actually serves the business that we're in. So ITIL tries to do that. It tries to look at our IT infrastructure and try and understand how well that serves the business and what we can do to make it better. How hard can it be to advance a slide? Come on, you can do it, computer. You can do it. The other thing that I was saying when I was on mute was Emmanuel could just drop off one of those new computers that he's got behind him, because it looks like I could do with one.
Yes, sure.
Okay, so ITIL tries to do that. It tries to put it into this kind of context. Now, one thing I will say, and it might help you understand some of the words that are used, some of the ways they approach it. ITIL comes from America, COBIT comes from the UK, and they take that very different approach. In fact, COBIT was a UK government structure to begin with before it was hived off. But ITIL tries to place IT into the business realm. And as with both of these things, it's not about saying you will go to Cisco and buy this router. You will go to this software company and buy their anti-hacking software. It's not about that. It's about trying to understand how it works, trying to understand how the hardware and software serves the business. And it is absolutely, definitely not a way of saying, use this, this, and this. That said, quite often, what that tends to mean is that you will end up getting industry standard kit. It used to be that there was a phrase that you never get fired for buying IBM. The idea was IBM was so big in computing, they had so many customers that you could point to something and say, look, of course we bought IBM. There's all our competitors there, and there. They're all using IBM. They're all doing this. The fact that we've got a problem is unfortunate, but clearly it's not my fault. And that same kind of thing happens. You might want to go and buy a Huawei router because you'll get it for 2/3 of the price. But if something goes wrong, if an intellectually subnormal man-child suddenly decides that America is not going to have a relationship with China and then we have to follow on, it might be that it costs you $5 billion to change your infrastructure from Huawei to something else. So instead of picking Huawei, you go for Cisco because everybody else does. It's an industry norm. And you can say, well, look, yeah, everybody uses Cisco. Of course we use Cisco. So compliance is useful, but it actually can stifle innovation a wee bit. People tend to want to show that they've done their the right thing, with right very much being in inverted commas. What they haven't possibly done is the best thing. So they might not always be the same thing. The other thing, of course, is that for most organizations, you don't get the benefit of a blank sheet of paper. It's rare in your career where you will wander into a company and they are still using adding machines, pens and pencils. They'll have bought stuff over the years. It'll be sitting there doing whatever job it was bought to do. What might not happen, of course, is that these systems might not talk to each other. For example, the auto bank system, so where you go and put your card in and get some cash out, large sections of it still run on Windows NT, which came out in the year 2000. I have gone into companies where their manufacturing systems run on Windows 95. Why? Because they bought a big, in-your-face, massive machine to do a particular job of making whatever widget it is. When they did it, the cutting edge was it was going to be controlled by a computer, and that computer's cutting edge operating system was Windows 95. And if you've spent £3 or £4 million on a big machine, you're not going to go, well, we better chuck this out because they've moved on from Windows 95. Instead, they're going to sit there and make sure that their Windows 95 machine runs forever. I think the example that always comes to mind is the UK's nuclear submarines, which don't just run on Windows 95, they also still have floppy disks. Why would they change it? There's an awful lot of stuff behind that they would have to change for no good reason. And we've mentioned this before, we've spoken before about things like, did we speak before about it? Sorry, I sometimes get confused about the different classes, but we may have spoken before about the massive big IBM. We did. We spoke about massive IBM mainframes, which are actually used in many cases to virtualize old systems so that they can continue to run their old hardware, their old software with their new mainframe. The idea being then that you can bring all these systems together and have them run together without being too concerned about keeping old hardware running or having to have support for the software. That happens in all sorts of industries. So you'll have a whole pile of hardware, a whole pile of software, not all of it will work together because it will have been put in as they needed something. The design department needed a CAD system. Well, they went out and bought a CAD system. They went out and bought what they thought was the best CAD system, and it possibly was the best CAD system. It doesn't mean it will talk to their design hardware or their CNC machines. So you've got all these disparate bits of hardware and software with different operating systems, different ways of working. It makes it really hard to say that you are in compliance. If you've got one thing, you can say, yep, we do this, 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 and this, and we are compliant. Yay, us. That becomes orders of magnitude harder as you begin to have different types of hardware, multiple bits of hardware, multiple pieces of software. So how do you start to get that kind of organization compliant? Not surprisingly, government was a gold standard in multiple systems that didn't talk to each other. So ITIL was, did I say earlier that ITIL was American and COBIT was UK? It's the other way about, sorry. ITIL was UK government's attempt to look at this. It was an attempt, so we spoke last week, the week before, about PDCA, which stood for?
I can't remember.
Anybody?
Plan, do,
And do check.
Oh, check
check,
act.
act. Aye.
Plan, do, check, act. It was this whole continuous improvement idea. And that's what they wanted to do with their systems. So they started to think about the best way of doing that. And you'll start to see these kinds of diagrams popping up every so often. The idea being that you've got a need. You've got something that you want to do. And hopefully it's going to provide value for people that are paying for it, for us. So we look at how that fits into everything that we do. We look at how that fits into the principles of how we provide our services, how it fits into our approach to continual improvement, which is, of course, something that we've been talking about, the idea that organizations will try and continue to improve. Does it fit into our governance principles? Are we just, I don't know, giving a contract to the cousin of one of our mates? What about the practices that we already have in place? Does it fit in with those, and can it add value to those? And finally, how does that then work with our whole service values? Can we prove a link between what we are doing and providing service? So, in detail then, so we've got our guiding principles up here. What are our guiding principles for anything that we do in an organization? Well, that's up to the organization. But as far as ITIL are concerned, you need value. Now, value does not always equate to cost. If you are organizing transport to take children to school, the cheapest thing to do might be to buy 50-year-old buses and chuck them on it. But there's no value, because after a week they'll have broken down. You'll have to fix them. You'll have to go and run about and try and grab other buses or taxis. And you might have to fix them to continually to keep providing that service. So for most contracts, you won't just look at how much the cost is, you'll also look at a quality threshold. What does it provide? What does it do? Does it give us what we want? And in fact, standard procurement will actually say, you don't go in and ask to buy something. You actually set out what it is you want first. You decide what you need to get out of this thing. What's important to you? Relatively, how important are they? Put them in order and say, okay, well, I'm going to allocate 20% to, does it operate with my other systems? I'm going to allocate 20% to the features. I'm going to allocate, and it might get to the end and you go, and I'm also going to allocate 10% to the actual cost. So cost will come into it, but only where you can fulfill the other issues. And part of that is because it does have to fit in with what you have. So another guiding principle with ITIL is you are somewhere. You don't have that blank sheet of paper. You will have things in place. So perhaps things that are working, excuse me, should be kept, should be preserved, and actually just improve them. Everything we're doing should improve. We're always going to try and improve. And again, we've spoken about that in previous weeks. We do an iterative improvement, get the feedback, improve again, get more feedback, and keep going and keep going. And that only works if everybody buys into it. It can't be a top-down thing. You can't, for example, decide at the top end of a university to completely change the VLE. So at the moment you're on Moodle, it would be really silly for an organisation without consulting students or staff or education technologists or IT or anyone else who has to support anything. It'd be really silly for an organisation to move away from the existing VLE and just, excuse me, arbitrarily decide to put in a new one. That would be just stupid. So you have to collaborate. You have to understand what people want, what they're going to get out of this, and ensure that it works holistically. Are IT on board? Are the people that are going to use it on board? Are all the support people on board? Are the managers on board? And where you can, let's make things automatic. So particularly in our sphere, we have computers because we want things to work automatically. So, for example, the university systems in here usually would have you scan your card to prove that you came to a lecture. Those systems haven't changed, but you're not here and you can't scan your card. So the suggestion is that I, within this meeting, take a note of how many people there are and then go to our systems and enter that manually, which might be okay for this class. Looking around, there's fewer than 10 of us. There are 10 of us. Bonnie's down at the bottom. I didn't see him there. So 10 manual.
I'm listening to you.
I know. No, it's just the way the screen is. There's a 3x3 grid, and then there's one person hidden down the bottom that I didn't even notice, and it was you. And now that you've spoken, you've popped up onto my 9x9 grid, and someone else has moved down to the bottom. It was less about you and more about the fact that I hadn't noticed that there was other things down the bottom. Anyway, so there's 10 of us in this class. It's entirely possible for me to go, and it won't take too long for me to enter all those names manually. But yesterday I was teaching a class, a first-year class, a first-year class on Introduction to Programming, and there's over 70 people. Now, by the time I sit in a lecture and write down the names of 70 people, take those names and go to another system and then enter those again, we're pretty much finished with the lecture for the day. So we want to take out anything manual and move to an automatic system. So for example, I can go to Teams and it can give me an insight into who was at the lecture. And I'm using that instead of our traditional systems. If we can, let's not have human intervention, because humans aren't that great at doing things. Okay, so that was guiding principles. What about governance? Well, it's the same governance that we've looked at before. Make sure that whoever's controlling it is on board. If they're not on board, they can get very upset. Oops. What about continual improvement down the bottom there? What is it? What is it we're trying to do? Do we even understand where we are just now in order to get to where we want to get there? Do we understand the process? All these things that we've been talking about over the last few weeks. And you can compare them with what we talked about with PCDA, PDCA even. Mistake on that slide. So we're trying to continually improve. And we're trying to improve in particular places, which they call practices, how we actually work and do this. Now, we're not going to go over these. There are dozens of them, 34 for ITIL, lots more for COBIT, and there are 3 main headings: management, service, and technical. By the way, when you come to doing your report, definitely think about that bit. You'll remember that COBIT and ITIL are specifically mentioned in the marking scheme. You might want to take this as a hint. And there's been other things in the slides where I've suggested similar things, which might also be helpful for your report. Okay, so what we're talking about for management practices. There's a whole pile of them. You could probably come up with them yourself. Those are just some of the big ones, partly chosen because we've spoken about them before. We've spoken about financial risk, so part of what we want to do is financial management. So it's in there as a general management practice. We've talked about continual improvement and measurement and reporting. How do we know if we've improved if we can't measure it? So there's all those things on there that all need to be thought about, and hopefully you have some sort of evidence that you've done these things. What was your strategy for changing the denial of service, anti-denial of service software? What was a strategy for that? Did it fit into our information security management practices? Did we make the change happen properly? Are we happy that our suppliers will still be here next year? All of these things need to be thought about, and ITIL gives you that list of things that you might want to think about and that you might want to have evidence that you've thought about it and made a conscious decision, and not just that you've woken up one morning and thought, yeah, I quite fancy buying this. Similarly with service management. The first one there is talking about business analysis. IT does not stand alone, it serves a business. So this change that you're making, does it actually help the business? Will it provide extra capacity? What about the service desk? Will they be able to support it? If there's a problem, what happens next? How do you test it? All of these things that hopefully you've seen before, but will certainly need to be thinking about with these developments that you're making, all exist and all need to be addressed. If you haven't thought about these things, if you haven't addressed all these things, how do you know that it's a good change that you're making? Similarly, what about the technical stuff? If you're getting a new piece of software, can you get it out there? Do you have the infrastructure? Do you have the management skills to support it? And that sort of stuff you want to think about before you put it in, and not 3 months after when it's all falling down around your ankles. Nobody's asking anything. You're all very quiet.
No, I don't have anything to ask just now, just taking it in.
No, it's all flowing in the right direction.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So taking those things into account, we might want to think about how we're going to do this stuff. If we have a demand for something, we have a demand for a new GDPR compliant website because the legislation's changed. Give me a second. As you know, it's sunny down here in Ayrshire all the time, and the sun's just come in and I can't see a flaming thing. Hang on. That's better. So you've got a demand for a new website that's GDPR compliant. You're going to need to engage. Who are you going to need to engage with for that? Who might be included?
In the organization, or
yeah,
well, obviously people like HR to understand the policies, employees so they understand.
Stakeholders.
Board of directors.
Yeah.
Which I'll put down as governance.
Potentially your clients, so they know that you're implementing it.
The information manager and his compliance manager, so knows to know the guideline to implement the changes.
So I'll just put that down as IT because my handwriting's getting worse and worse. Anybody else? Do you have web designers going? Creating your website? Do you have corporate communications who are interested in what goes up on a public facing website? Do you have 34 different practices that you might want to think about before you get anywhere on from the engagement? There's loads of them, and it just sort of gives you that wee checklist to go, okay, have we thought about? Once you've made that engagement, you can start to think about how that then goes ahead. So if people are happy with this, how do we obtain it? What do we obtain? Who do we obtain it from? What are the core features that we need? How are we going to implement that? How are we going to transition from one to the other? And once it's in, how are we going to deliver it and support it? And only once we've done all that, once we've done all of this big bit here, thinking about how we can plan it and improve it, only once we've done all that do we get to this tiny wee bit, which is the actual thing we're going to buy. The product or the service, depending on whether it's hardware or software or just even services from a third party. The point is, the getting the thing is the wee bit. It's everything else around it that's important. And even once you've got it, you check that it's working. Are we getting value from this? How do you know? Well, is there a demand for something else? What demand? Oh boy, we better talk to these people again. So we'll continue to plan, we'll continue to improve, and we'll go around this again and again and again. Is the slide messy enough now? Okay, so we have to ensure that whatever we're doing, we've thought about all the angles. So it's nice if someone else has thought about them first. And it's even nicer if that's then a standard. And if someone asks us, have you done all this? You can go, yeah, I followed the ITIL standard and we did all of this stuff around it. Because even when you do all this, things can still go wrong. Of course they can. This isn't a magic bullet that means things will always go right. What it is a way of saying, not only did I do my best, I did everything that everyone else thinks is the best too. And if there's something else that you think we should have done, that's fine. But actually that would then need to, that would suggest that best practice isn't best practice. And actually the best practice itself needs to improve. So we end up with a model to plan, improve, engage, design, only then obtain and build, and then deliver and support it. So most of the stuff is before you start. The smaller bit is after it goes in. I spoke before about ISO 31000, which was general guidance. There's specific guidance for IT, and it's easy to remember. It's ISO 20000. And it continues to iterate. So just as we said there, when best practice stops being best practice, we need to change what it does. So we continue to iterate the International Standards Organization's best practice models. And in fact, what they tend to do is not just iterate, they also incorporate. So for any Star Trek fans, they're like the Borg. They start out and then they incorporate all the other things. So ITIL now incorporates COBIT. And it says, yeah, okay, this is fine. So rather than us going and reinventing this, let's point to the bits in COBIT that you might want to use. If you have an operations framework from a supplier who are so big that you can't ignore them, like Microsoft, and if you haven't come across the Microsoft operations framework, you should have a look at it. That's now incorporated into the international standard. But Tony, you cry, because I can hear you screaming from here. You said that this was going to be platform, software, organization, and technology agnostic. And now you're telling me we've got the Microsoft operations framework incorporated in there, which is true, which is why I suggest you go and have a look at it. Because even though Microsoft have created it, it is actually still platform agnostic. Now, you won't be surprised to know that Microsoft would prefer if you bought all your stuff from them. And of course, all of their things will fit into this framework, but it doesn't mean the framework in and of itself isn't useful. So, as with most of these ISO things, they're massive. So we'll stick mostly about part one, which is service management. And it's all the things that we've been talking about in the past few weeks and the things that we've been talking about this week. The scope of what we're doing, how we're going to show leadership on it, how we're going to get the leadership on board, how we're going to plan it, how we're going to evaluate it, how we're going to improve it. So you'll see all of these things popping up. ISO 31000, ISO 2000, ITIL, COBIT, more letters and numbers than you can shake a stick at, but they're all trying to do the same sort of thing. They're trying to ensure that whatever you do, you're implementing the best thing in the best way with the best reasons for your business. Questions?
No, not from me.
Stunned you into submission.
When you just reference the field, something like seconds,
Sorry, Hayden, I don't know if it's just me, but you're kind of fading in and out.
I don't think it was me, I wasn't talking.
I'm not sure if Brian has just taken a picture and left it there, but he hasn't moved in the last 5 minutes. He hasn't even blinked.
Can you hear me? Hello?
That's freaky.
Yeah, he's got his picture as a virtual background.
I think so. All right. If there's no questions, there's no specific tutorial on the slide for this because what I want you to do,
like if somebody
Sorry?
had been, hello, this is Adebayo speaking.
Okay, speak up a wee
Can
bit,
you hear me?
Adebayo.
Yes, what I'm saying is, whilst we are talking about this subject, I am just thinking about some of the encounter or experience I've had with some of the organizations I work for, because things will just happen, and I will think, actually, has anybody thought about this before actually starting? Because if I can remember, there was, as in maybe somebody.
Sorry, Adebayo, I'm really
like,
sorry. I've got my speakers up to full and I'm still struggling to hear you. And I can't get
Can
any
you hear
closer
me
to
now?
them either.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's a wee bit better, but it's not great. Keep going, I'll try.
Let me see.
Is it just me? Can everyone else hear him, or is it?
I can hear him fine.
I can hardly hear you either, Hayden.
Let me just try to change my headset as well. You see, that will be better. Just a moment.
Try again.
Yeah, I'm going to try it.
Oh, no, that's it. That's it. For some reason,
Hello?
speakers were down. Yeah, that's better. My speakers were down at 20% for some reason.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Oh, much better. That's
Uh,
good.
yeah, I'm just it's trying to say that as you were discussing the subject, I was trying to just recollect some of the experience I've had with some of the organization I've worked with. Like sometimes things will happen. I was thinking, does anybody thought about this before? Because I most of some part of my role maybe with asset procurement, and then the so and I would see things happening. I was like, I don't know what is happening with the decision makers, but I would things turn up. But like for example, maybe the team requested for users, we requested for, let me say, a laptop, and then all of a sudden lap, laptop will turn up not exactly what we asked for. And I'll be wondering, like, who was making this decision, because we requested for this and this, and then this turn up, and then most of the time we have to return those items, or sometimes maybe we want to implement a new system. And before we know it, from our team, we are still talking, planning this. Then before we know it, announcement has gone out from the high level that they've given the date, given the time, whereas we technical side, we are still working to get everything ready. And then by the time we realize, we're going to be like under pressure, running to keep up with the announcements that have been made. So I was just like, was the people making this decision are they not following? Because what you are teaching us now, it means if they have followed those guidelines, everything should have gone smoothly, and then everybody will be carried along, and then we will not be facing a sort of embarrassment like that.
So they've clearly not followed the engagement part at any point. You've identified a demand. They have not engaged to understand what the demand is, what it is you need, how it's going to actually be used in practice. And that's part of the reason we do this stuff that we're talking about in the lecture. Because actually what's happened in your experience then is that they've ignored all this and everything's actually just taking longer and costing more. Instead of getting stuff that you need, you've got stuff that you can't use, which has to go back, which takes longer, which takes people's time, and you're not fulfilling the need that it gets. And sadly, it's not unusual. Not everybody goes to the extreme of actually doing all of the ITIL or the COBIT stuff. But most people at least usually acknowledge that there is a place for this kind of stuff. It sounds from what you're saying that your guys don't. Any other questions or comments?
Just a quick one. Like you said, comparison between like COBIT ITIL and PDCA. Can we mention not something like ISO 27001 as well?
Please,
yeah.
yeah.
Because I had clocked it, or not clocked, but I remember that when going back through today, the ITIL stuff and what you said, start of the year as well, I noticed a couple of similarities between 27001 and ITIL from what I remember doing the work. So I just seen if it not that it's relevant, it probably would be and probably good to talk about, just like with it be handy, I guess.
Yeah, no, go for it. Absolutely.
Cool. All right, cool. Just
anything else? Yeah, Brian's disappeared. Sorry.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next question I'll try to ask is, if you find yourself in this type of situation, that you know what should be done, because like most of my job I work as a contractor. So, and I have the permanent, as in maybe the full staff, or as in the staff with the establishment. So, and you see this happening, is there a better way of how do one cope, or what should be a sort of response? Because if this you are saying, like you're saying this over and over again, is there any better way for someone that's have this knowledge that something is missing? Is there any way you can make use of that, as in be maybe contribute or be influential in that arrangement?
Well, of course, that's going to be entirely up to you, and it'll depend on your relationships within that organization. But I can say that at least if you have this knowledge, you can point to a better way to approach things. And my experience is that whereas simply saying there and sitting somewhere and saying, no, this is no good, doesn't tend to meet with great acceptance. Sitting there and saying, why don't we do this instead, can actually have some traction. But it's always going to be different depending on the organization. Some organizations will never change because that's just what they are.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, what I'm going to do is I will stop this recording.